basically could say is a kangaroo court, summarily sentenced to death and executed in the final weeks of the war. So it's a somber time, but it's also a time when our nation is in the midst of war, that we also remember those who presently are giving their lives for our country and for freedom and for our for democracy and for the well-being of the world. What we have is a great collection. We have a great collection of people here today. So glad that we have a nice turnout as good as this. What we'll do is we'll get right underway. We have a fairly simple program, which will consist of a couple of readings, a wreath laying, a moment of silence, and then also a playing of taps. And at that point, after that, those of you who can make it for lunch, we'd be very happy. We've made a reservation at a restaurant nearby. If you can make it for that, that would be great. If you cannot, that's also fine. To get underway, I believe we have the first reading. John, I think you're up. You'll be doing it jointly.
Well, I'm doing it jointly and then some. I have a picture of my dad who passed away 2 years ago that I carry with me, in which I brought today in memory of those who served, those who worked and supported those who served. In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly scarce heard amid the guns below.
We are the dead. Short days ago, we lived, felt dawn, saw unrest glow, correction, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields.
Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from falling hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields.
Excellent. Judy, we have a second reading for.
Judy, you want to go up? By the flag there.
The window carried the sound.
Our gift to the fallen, for each soldier that has fallen, so that many may stand. Honor their spirit as they pass to God's hand. For without their sacrifice, who could live forever in fear? Pray for their loved ones and provide a salute and a tear. God help us heal the wounds of hate in the misery of war. That is our gift to our fallen heroes that are amongst us no more.
Very much. Now we could have the replay. Oh yes, Michael Hurst has a list which we'd never heard of. I hadn't heard of until he emailed me about this, but you've actually compiled a list of the 57 Americans whose names we actually have record of, who died in Taiwan during the war as POWs or revolt, as POWs. I have a reading of those names by Michael Hurst.
Yeah, it would be interesting on Memorial Day to do that. We've actually had this list for quite a number of years now, and it just suddenly dawned on me that maybe it would be good to, really read out the names of the American fallen who died in the prison camps here. There were 57 altogether, and they're basically in alphabetical order. I'll just read the name and the regiment. Private First Class William Bertram, 4th U.S. Marines. Colonel Frank Bresina, who's on Force U.S. Army. Sergeant George Brown, Far East Air Force, U.S. Army Air Corps. Colonel Paul Bunker, Coast Artillery Command, U.S. Army. Master Sergeant Kavanaugh, James Kavanaugh, 2nd Philippine Corps. Walter Sigoy, Corporal, 192nd Tank Battalion. Private First Class John de Blasio, 4th U.S. Marines. Private Ernest DeMello, 59th Coast Artillery Corps. Private First Class Wilson Draper, 31st Infantry. Private Carl Garr, 192nd Tank Battalion. Private Coleman Grealish, 60th Coast Artillery. Charles Hughes, Private, 31st Infantry. Wilbur Hunsinger, RM-3C, U.S. Navy, was on the USS Tanager. Charles Jackson, Jr., 60th Army CAC, private. MM-2C Lloyd Klett, U.S. Navy, off the USS Canopus. Virgil E. Kuhn, Staff Sergeant, 803rd Engineers. Raymond LeCouture, Private, 59th CAC. Billy Lay, 59th CAC, was also private. Sergeant Frank Leroy, 60th CAC, Coast Artillery. Ralph Madison, Private First Class, 192nd Tank Battalion. Brigadier General Alan McBride, who's on force, U.S. Army. Staff Sergeant Joseph McKinnon, the Quartermaster Corps, U.S. Army. Corporal Harry Miller, 229th Signal Company, U.S. Army. Joseph Monfort, Private, 59th CAC. Fred Monrien, 60th CAC. Clayton Moorhead, 31st Infantry, Private First Class. Sergeant John Marine, 192nd Tank Battalion. Thomas E. Paddock, Sergeant, 200th CAC. Adam Pliska, 12th Military Police, Philippine Scouts, U.S. Army. Private First Class George Reschels, 27th Bomb Group, 48th MAT, United States Army Air Corps. Melvin Roberts, Private, 31st Infantry. Michael Serdiak, U.S. Army Air Corps. Edward Cyber, VPB 117, U.S. Navy, was an AMM-2C. Albert Stilley, 19th Bomb Group, 30th Bomb Squadron, U.S. Army Air Corps. Francis Sturgis, 19th Air Base Squadron, U.S. Army Air Corps. Ray Taylor, 4th U.S. Marines. Paul Tulloch, U.S. Navy, USS Canopus. Howard Turrentine, Quartermaster Corps, U.S. Army, Corporal. Sergeant Charles Uphoff, 2nd Observer Squadron, U.S. Army Air Corps. John Urban, Corporal, again the Quartermaster Unit. Private James Wagner, Quartermaster Corps. And Sergeant Forrest Woolley of the 803rd Engineers. Last but not least, I wanted to read off the names again of the 14 men who were executed and who we commemorate here. I was talking to Judy, and there were 25 American shot-down prisoners that were imprisoned here. The Japanese didn't consider shot-down airmen or crashed airmen as prisoners of war. They considered them as war criminals, and they were all accused of indiscriminately bombing innocent civilians. Well, then it brings to mind, what did they call what they did in China on all the cities and areas where they killed millions of people by supposedly bombing cities and innocent civilians. However, these, on the 29th of May, as John said, 1945, 14 of these 25 men were taken over to the Chinese court, which is just around here on Tsinghua and given a mock trial with no defense, and were pronounced guilty of indiscriminate bombing of innocent civilians and sentenced to death. And part of their torture, of course, was not knowing when they were going to be executed. And one morning on the 19th of June, the Japanese came in and woke them up and said, okay, out in the courtyard. And it was just down here past the entrance gate to the side of the wall where they were executed in the courtyard in a V-shaped area they called the execution or the killing area. The men were cremated after that. Their bodies were put in a Japanese temple downtown, which is no longer there. And after the war, the ashes were returned to the United States military for burial, and all of the men are buried either in the States, continental USA, or Hawaii. And on our website, we have photos of their graves and everything, so we've been able to track that down. Anyway, these are the men who died that day. ARM-2C Harry Aldro, he was at Squadron BT-20, U.S. Navy. AMMC J.C. Buchanan from VPB 117, U.S. Navy. AOM-3C Delbert Carter from BP 117. Ralph Hartley, Lieutenant, 35th Fighter Group, 40th Fighter Squadron, U.S. Air Force. Donald Hathaway, AMM-3C, VPB 117. James Langiotti, ARN-1C, BB-8 BFM 221, U.S. Navy. Sergeant Bobby Lawrence, 90th Bomb Group, 19th Bomb Squadron, U.S. Army Air Corps. ARM-1C Freddie McCurry, BB-18, U.S. Navy. AOM-2C Charles McVeigh, BT-220, U.S. Navy. John R. Parker, AMM-2C, VPB 117. Sergeant Merlin Riggs, 90th Bomb Group, 19th Bomb Squadron. Lieutenant Harwood S. Sharp, BB-8, FBM 224, 1 U.S. Navy. He and Lanziotti were crewmates. Harry J. Spivey, Sergeant, 90th Bomb Group, 19th Bomb Squadron, and Wayne Wilson, ARM-3C, BPB 117. May we never forget their sacrifice for our freedom.
Now we'll have a playing of taps, followed by a minute of silence. So we may start. May we never forget their sacrifice. Thank you all for coming today.
Do we know if there's any surviving